welcome to our 7th video in this series of videos on understanding Gurbani by yourself and for yourself. We agreed that what we needed was a structured and systematic process for understanding Gurbani. We gave a name to this structured framework, namely the Gurbani framework, and we said that this framework consisted of 10 principles. In our previous 6 videos, we have looked at as many principles. The first was getting from the literal to the spiritual. The second was the Rahao principle. The third principle we looked at was context. The fourth was the spirituality of the self. The fifth principle was realizing the creator within. In our last video, we examined the sixth principle, what I call the spirituality of the here and now. We talked of a canvas or a mindset. A correct mindset is always needed whenever you want results. You enter into a relationship, you need a mindset of commitment, of caring, of sharing. Else it will not work. You watch these videos of mine on understanding Gurbani, you need the right mindset, an open mind that is ready to unlearn and then relearn. A mindset that wants to hold on to and defend old mindsets will only mean you are wasting your time and your effort. So, when we approach Gurbani for the purposes of wanting to understand the original intent, the intent that was meant to be understood by the authors of Gurbani, we need to approach Gurbani with a proper mindset. The correct mindset is that Gurbani is a spirituality for the here and now. We need this mindset to understand the spiritual messages of Gurbani. This was the fabric of Sikhi. This was the parameter of Gurbani. The obsession, if you want to call it as such, was with life and living. The fixation was with the here and now. So we said that we needed to discard this pre-1469 mindset in our quest to understand Gurbani and adopt this canvas instead. You cannot approach Gurbani with this Gurbani rejected mindset. If you do, Pyareo, you will not get to the original intent of Gurbani. Now, these are the main English translations of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Dr. Gopal Singh, Manmohan Singh Advocate, Gurbachan Singh Talib, Pritam Singh Chahal, Sant Singh Khalsa MD, and Dr. Harjinder Singh Dalgir. Their primary source is what we call the Faridkoti Tika. The Faridkoti translation was done by a group of Banaras-based, Banaras-educated Nirmalas. The effort was led by Sant Badan Singh of Dera Sekhwa and Pandit Tara Singh Narottam. It was financed by the Faridkot royal household, hence its name, Faridkoti. Maharaja Balveer Singh of Faridkot published its first edition in 1906. It was printed by the Wazir Hind Press at Amritsar, Punjab. This press was owned by Nirmala Pai Veer Singh. The second edition of this Tika was published by Maharaja Harinder Singh of Faridkot in 1928. You can see that Banaras, Pandits, Dera sons and Nirmalas coming together to produce this translation. One wonders where the real Sikhs were in this whole process. One wonders why these real Sikhs had no role. Anyway, the outcome of the Faridkoti translation is that the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji is presented as the fifth Ved. Sikhi is presented as a subset of the Sanatan, Vedic, Puranic, and Upanishad based system. If we take the Punjabi translations, there are two types. The Sampradai Tikas, done by the Taksals and Deras. Tikas such as that done by Pandit Narayan Singh, Sant Kirpal Singh, Sri Amir Padar, and Pai Veer Singh. Secondly, there are the non-Sampradai Tikas. The leading one is by Professor Sahib Singh, what we call the Darpan, and the other one is by Advocate Manmohan Singh. When it comes to relying on the Faridkoti Tika, the story is the same with all of them. The Faridkoti is the source for all of them. In other words, the Faridkoti Tika reinserted this Gurbani rejected canvas back into the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji through its translation process. And because all other English and Punjabi translations have the Faridkoti as their primary source, they too have inadvertently reinserted this canvas or mindset into their translations. Today, Pyareo, we will look at principle number 7 of our methodology and framework. The principle is using Gurbani to explain Gurbani, using Gurbani to understand Gurbani. This is an important principle because it helps us remove the old canvas from within our understanding of Gurbani. It helps us to eliminate our reliance on the old canvas to understand Gurbani. At its most basic level, this principle means two things. One, we look for the meaning of words, concepts, idioms, etc. from within Gurbani. Two, we do that by using other verses within Gurbani to help us understand the verse we intend to understand. Taken together, it means we do not use sources outside the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. The Faridkoti Tika and all other translations that followed have used sources outside the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, what we call Sanatan sources. There are two types of Sanatan sources, Simritis, which are passed down by memory, and the Shastras, which are passed down by word of mouth. The Shastras and Simritis consist of 4 Veds, the Rig Ved, the Yajur Ved, the Sam Ved, and the Atharvan Ved. These sources also consist of 108 Upanishads. Let me give you a side note here. If you look at our Deras, we know their leaders have the titles of Sants and Babas, etc. They also have this title of Sri 108. Sant Baba ABC, Sri 108, Sri 108. And the mala, the rosary that they spin, has 108 beads. In case you're wondering, this is where the 108 comes from, the 108 Upanishads. And we expect these people, these Dera Baba's sons, and these Sri 108s to actually have a genuine understanding of Gurbani and to give it to us. Then there are 18 Purans, the Agni Puran, Bhagavat Puran, Pavesh Puran, Brahmand Puran, Brahma Vairat Puran, Garad Puran, Kurma Puran, Ling Puran, Markandeya Puran, Naradiya Puran, Parama Puran, Shiv Puran, Skanda Puran, Vaman Puran, Vara Puran, Vayu Puran, and Vishnu Puran. All of these are, of course, in Sanskrit. The Bachitra Granth, or what we call the Dasam Granth, is presented to the Sikh world as a translation of some of these Purans. The main Purans in the Dasam Granth are the Markandeya Puran, Shiv Puran, Skand Puran, and Vishnu Puran. Then there are 18 Up-Purans or minor Purans. And then there is the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, of which there are two, the Tulsi version of Ramayana and the Valmiki version. So when we say that principle number 7, which is using Gurbani to explain Gurbani and using Gurbani to understand Gurbani, what we are saying is that when this principle is applied in our process of understanding of Gurbani, then Gurbani is the sole source, and that Gurbani is the sole indicator of original intent. In other words, when we ask the question, what is the original intent of a particular verse, a particular shabd, a particular composition, the answer must lie within Gurbani, not outside. Now, to illustrate our principle, we are going to look at one Ashtapadi from within the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. An Ashtapadi is a 8-para composition, a composition that consists of 8 paragraphs. The Ashtapadi we are looking at starts with this verse, Char padartha jeko mange sadh jana ki seva lage. If you look at the translation of this verse in Professor Sahib Singh's Darpan, this is what you get. Je koi manukh char padarthaਂ ਧਰਮ ਅਰਥ ਕਾਮ ਮੋਖ ਦਾ ਲੋੜਵੰਦ ਹੋਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਗੁਰਮੁਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੱਗੇ. The English translation of which is, if one wants the 4 cardinal blessings, namely righteousness, worldly wealth, procreation and salvation, he or she should serve the Gurmukhs. Now, if you look at the Gurbani verse carefully, you will notice that the 4 padarth, the 4 padarth are not specified. In other words, the original intent needs to be found. We need to find what are the 4 blessings. But the translation tells us that these are the 4 cardinal blessings, namely dharma, artha, kam, mokh, righteousness, worldly wealth, procreation and salvation. So now, if we asked the question, since the verse merely says char padarth, but it does not specify or does not mention which are the 4, then where are our translators getting the answers from? Where are the 4 specific padarths that are mentioned in the translations coming from? What is the source of this information? You guessed it right. These are the sources, the Simritis and the Shastras. What does principle number 7, which is using Gurbani to explain Gurbani, say? That Gurbani is the sole source, that Gurbani is the sole indicator of original intent. In other words, when we ask the question, what is the original intent, the answer must lie within Gurbani and not outside. So, let's try to apply this principle to get to the original intent of this verse. This is the verse we are looking at. Char padartha jeko mange sadh jana ki seva lage. In the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, this is the verse as it appears on page 266. Now, this is an Ashtapadi meaning 8 paras. The paragraph we are looking at is paragraph number 5. Let's begin by applying the Rahao principle. The Rahao equivalent of an Ashtapadi is the slok. The slok of an Ashtapadi always appears at the beginning. So let's go to the beginning, which is on the previous page. Here is the previous page, page 265. This is the slok at the start of the Ashtapadi. This then is the Rahao equivalent. This is where the Ashtapadi begins. The word Ashtapadi is there, underlined in green. And this is the slok. Bo Shashtar, Bo Simrati, Pekhe Sarbat ढोल, Pujas Nahi Har Hare, Nanak Naam Amol. Meaning, I have studied and researched Pekhe Sarbat ढोल, all the Shastras and Simratis, Bhav Shastra, Bhav Simrati. What I have found is that there is no discourse of the omnipresent Creator therein, Pujas Nahi Har Hare. Within the spirituality of Nanak, divine virtues are priceless, Nanak Naam Amol. In other words, the Simratis and Shastras are being rejected. These sources, all the Simratis, all the Shastras, Bhav Shastra, Bhav Simrati, they are being rejected. Then, how did these four things, Dharma, Artha, Kam, Mokha, get inserted into the translation of Professor Saib Singh? How did these four cardinal blessings, righteousness, worldly wealth, procreation, and salvation, get smuggled into virtually every translation of Gurbani, Punjabi, and English? Now, remember, Pyareo, we are examining paragraph 5. Char padarth jeko mange, sad jana ki seva lage. So now, let's examine the four paragraphs preceding the para we are examining. The four paragraphs that come before Char padarth jeko mange, sad jana ki seva lage. This is the first one, the one in green. It looks tedious, but let me read it out for you. जाप ताप ज्ञान सब ध्यान खट शास्त्र सिमरत वख्यान योग अभ्यास कर्म धर्म किरिया सगल त्याग बन मदे फिरिया अनक प्रकार किए बो जतना पुण्य दान होमे बो रतना शरीर कटाए होमे कर राती वर्त नेम करे बहु भांति नहीं तोल राम नाम विचार नानक गुरमुख नाम जपिया एक बार. Guru Arjan Pasha, the writer, is talking about the contents of the Shastras and Simratis, the sources he rejected in his slok. This para has the contents of the Shastras and Simratis, Jap Tap, meditations and penances, Yoga Abhyas, yogic practices, Karma Dharma Kirya, rituals and ritualistic deeds, Bana Made Firya, going to the jungles, Pondadan Home Boratana, donations and feeding and feasting others, Vartanema, Kare Baupanti, daily rituals of different types. The conclusion of Guru Arjan Pasha is in yellow, Nahi Tola Ram Naam Vichar. Guru Arjan Ji is saying, none of the above are the equivalent of the adoption of divine virtues. Nanak Gurmukh Naam Japiya Ek Baar. They are thus all rejected in the spirituality of Guru Nanak, in the spirituality of Sikhi, in the spirituality of Gurbani. Now, this is paragraph 2. Naukhand Prithvi Firechir Jiva Maha Udas Tapisar Thiva Agan Mahe Homat Paran कनक असव हैवर भूमदान न्योली कर्म करे बहु आसन जैन मार्ग संजम अत साधन निमख निमख कर शरीर कटावे तौ पी हौमै मैल ना जावे. Again, a whole lot of acts, deeds, rituals, baths, yogic seating positions and practices based on the Shastras and Simratis. And the conclusion of Guru Arjan, again in yellow, is Har ke naam samsar kach nahe, Nanak Gurmukh naam japat gat pahe. Translation: none of these acts, practices, and rituals are on par with realization of divine virtues within. Now, this is paragraph number 3. मन कामना तीर्थ दे छुटै, गर्भ गुमान ना मनते हुटै. सोच करे दिन अर रात, मन की मैल ना तानते जात. इस देही को बहु साधना करे, मन ते कभू ना बिखिया टरै. जल धोवै बहु दे अनीत, शुद्ध कहाँ होए काची पीत. Again, a whole lot of acts, deeds, rituals, penances, ritualistic baths, sadhanas, and practices based on the Shastras and Simritis. And the conclusion in yellow: मन हर के नाम की महिमा ऊंच, नानक नाम उदरे पतत बहुमूच. O mind, highest of all is the realization of divine virtues. Now this is paragraph 4. बहुत सियाणप जमका भौ व्यापै, अनक जतन कर तृसन ना त्रापै. भेख अनेक अगन नहीं बुझै, कोट उपाव दरगाह नहीं सजै. छूटस नाही ऊप प्याल, मोह व्यापै माया जाल. अवर करतूत सगली जमडानै, गोविंद भजन बिन तिल नहीं मानै. Again, whole lot of acts, deeds, rituals, and practices based on the Shastras and Simritis. And the conclusion in yellow is Har ka naam japat dukh jaye, Nanak bole sahaj subhaye. Meaning, realization of the divine virtues within, realization of the divine within dispels spiritual anguish. So, looking back at the Salok and the first 4 paragraphs, we see that the Shastras and Simritis are rejected. Bo Shastra, Bo Simriti, Pekha Sarbatandol, Pujas Nahi Har Hare, Nanak Naam Amod. Their philosophies, Jap, Tap, Gyan, Dhyan, are rejected. Jap, Tap, Gyan, Sab Dhyan. Their methods, yoga, abhyas, asanas, udas, sadhanas, karma, dharma, kriya, tirthas are rejected. Yog, abhyas, karma, dharma, kriya. Their beliefs, cleansing of the inner with outer bathing is rejected. Soch kare dins ar raat, man ki mail na tanate jaat. Their practices of punishing the physical body through penance is rejected. शरीर कटाए होमै कर राती, वर्त नेम करे भौ पांति. Their rituals, punna, dan, home, varat, name are rejected. Punna, dan, home, bhav, ratana. In essence then, the Salok and the first 4 paras tell us that the philosophies, beliefs, practices, methods, and rituals of the Simritis and Shastras are rejected within the parameters of Gurbani and Sikhi. But when it comes to the next para 5, the one we are examining, namely Char Padarth Jeko Mangay, Sar Jana ki Seva Lage, why is the Char Padarth of the Simritis and Shastras, namely Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha, suddenly accepted into this para according to the translations and according to the tikas? They are accepted only and only if the sources of Gurbani understanding are the Simritis and Shastras. They are accepted only if we accept that for some unexplained and unexplainable reason, the original intent of Gurbani is somehow determined by sources that are outside of Gurbani. That the original intent of Gurbani is somehow located outside Gurbani and within the Simritis and Shastras. What principle number 7, which is using Gurbani to explain Gurbani, is saying is that Gurbani is the sole source, that Gurbani is the sole indicator of original intent within Gurbani. Now, the other way we can apply the principle we are discussing today is to look at other verses within Gurbani. So when the translation says the char padartha, dharma, artha, kam, moksha, that the four cardinal blessings are righteousness, worldly wealth, procreation, and salvation, we can cross-check this claim with other verses within Gurbani. For the purposes of this video, let's take the second and fourth ones. Arth, meaning worldly wealth, which is the second one, and mokh, also known as mokshas or mukti, meaning salvation after life, which is the fourth one. So we are looking at the second and the fourth, worldly wealth and salvation after life. We have this verse on page 534 of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Raj na chahon, mukt na chahon, man preet charan kamlare. Two things are being rejected here. One, Raj na chahon. Raj is the situation of ultimate wealth, ultimate arth, ultimate worldly wealth and ultimate power. And all of these things are being rejected. Guru Arjan Ji is saying, Raj na chahon. I do not desire Raj, the epitome of worldly wealth and power. Then in the same verse, Guru Arjan Ji says, Mukt na chahon. I don't want salvation of the afterlife. Salvation after death is rejected soundly and consistently in Gurbani. In Gurbani, salvation is redefined to fit the canvas of Guru Nanak. Salvation is redefined to fit the mindset of Guru Nanak's spirituality. In Sikhi, we seek salvation in the here and now, salvation while being alive. We have this verse on page 275 of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Prabh ki agya आत्म हितावै जीवन मुक्त सो कहावै. The phrase जीवन मुक्त is both unique and revolutionary. It means salvation in the here and now, salvation while alive, जीवन मुक्त. Then we have another verse on page 831 of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. मान मोह दोनों को परहर गोविंद के गुण गावे, कहो नानक ए बिद को प्राणी जीवन मुक्त कहावे. It's clear that padarthas 2 and 4 are rejected. So are 1 and 3, and you can find evidence of their rejection abundantly within Gurbani. So if these are not the 4 cardinal blessings, dharma, artha, kam, moksha, or righteousness, worldly wealth, procreation, and salvation, are not reflective of the original intent of Gurbani, then what are the 4 blessings? What are the char padarth? Well, we apply principle 7, using Gurbani to understand Gurbani, to get to the answer. So let's do that. Now, this is the entire paragraph number 5, the one we are looking at. Thus far, we have been looking at the first couplet of the para only. So now let's look at the entire para. Char padarth jeko mangay, साध जना की सेवा लागै, जेको अपना दुख मिटावै, हर हर नाम हृदय सद गावै, जेको अपनी शोभा लोरै, साध संग ए हौमै छोरै, जेको जन्म मरण ते डरै, साध जना की सरणी परै, जिस जन को प्रभ दर्श प्यासा, नानक ताकै बल बल जासा. Can you see the 4 padarthas right inside this para itself? The first one is in yellow. Jeko apna dukh matavai, spiritual bliss. ਇਹ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਹੈ ਦੁੱਖ ਦਾ ਪੇਟਣਾ, ਭਾਵ ਆਨੰਦ, ਖੇੜਾ, ਸਹਿਜ ਤੇ ਵਿਕਾਸ ਦਾ ਹੋਣਾ. The second one is in green. ਜੇਕੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਭਾ ਲੋਰੈ, spiritual dignity. ਇਹ ਦੂਜਾ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਹੈ ਸੋਭਾ, ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਨਜ਼ਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਭਾ, ਆਪਣਾ ਮਾਣ. The third is in orange. ਜੇਕੋ ਜਨਮ ਮਰਨ ਤੇ ਡਰੈ, spiritual courage, fearlessness, ਇਹ ਤੀਜਾ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਹੈ ਹਰ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਭੈ ਦਾ ਮਿਟ ਜਾਣਾ। And the fourth is in red, ਜਿਸ ਜਨ ਕੋ ਪ੍ਰਭ ਦਰਸ ਪਿਆਸਾ, divine enlightenment ਦਰਸ। ਇਹ ਚੌਥਾ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਹੈ ਪ੍ਰਭੂ ਦਾ ਗਿਆਨ, ਰੱਬੀ ਚਾਨਣ, ਰੂਹਾਨੀ ਸੂਝ, ਦਰਸ। The first verse says, ਚਾਰ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਜੇ ਕੋ ਮੰਗੈ, and each subsequent verse provides one padarth each. The four blessings are mentioned within the same para, within the subsequent verses, verse by verse, one by one. What then is the need to go looking out there in the texts of others, in the belief systems of others, in sources that were rejected by Gurbani writers? ਦੇਖੋ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰਿਓ, ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਚਾਰ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਜੇ ਕੋ ਮੰਗੈ। ਇਹ ਤੇ ਹੋ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦਾ ਕਿ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਦੱਸਣ ਹੀ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਚਾਰ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਸਮਝਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਨੂੰ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਟੱਕਰਾਂ ਮਾਰ ਕੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਲੱਭਣਾ ਪਵੇ ਕਿ ਚਾਰ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ। I have provided only one example using one Ashtapadi, Char Padarth. But if one looks at our existing translations, this fatal flaw runs across the board. It's fatal because it kills the life of Gurbani. If you look at our existing translations, you will find that the shadow of the rejected canvas is found casted across 1429 pages. The DNA of the pre-1469 mindset is found embedded deeply within the entirety of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji translations in virtually all our translations. The consequence is that the innovative and revolutionary spiritual messages of Gurbani appear as no more than a rehash of old pre-existing beliefs, or as badly plagiarized and copied stuff lifted from pre-1469 belief systems. The fault lies not with Gurbani or the composers of Gurbani, but with the translations and their translators. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video in our series of videos on Understanding Gurbani. In that final video, we will look at the remaining three principles of our methodology, namely Gurbani grammar, spirituality of the Shabad, and the principle of inner consistency.